Hello, and welcome back to The Vocal Mind. The Vocal Mind is a podcast where we talk everything education. We think about what's happening today and what's needed. We challenge norms. We identify gaps. We talk about successes, and we hear from pupils and young people themselves, as well as parents, professionals, and experts in the world today who are looking for people coming out of education with the right skills and levels of education. My name is Tirzah Elese, and I am the host of The Vocal Mind, and I am once again excited to be here today with you. I was lucky enough to meet Courtney Carlson the other week on a networking event, and I'm so lucky I did. She reached out and wanted to get chatting further. Courtney is a dynamic author and speaker on emotional health. She's also a teacher and has had many years' experience in the school and in the classroom, which is unusual for me to invite you onto this podcast because we don't normally bring teachers in. But
Yeah.
Courtney is so unique in her mindsets around changing generational cycles in families. And today we're here to talk about autonomy. One of the things that is so close to my heart in regard to what we need to be giving people, employees, pupils, students, etc., and what young people really need to understand in regard to what it means and how they can use it and what it means for them. So thank you for being here, Courtney.
Thank you. I am so excited about this conversation. I've been looking forward to it on my calendar, like, oh, today's the day. Like, so thank you for letting me and be a teacher on your podcast.
Yes.
That feels good. Yeah, it is just like you said, one of the things that is so near and dear to my heart, and something that I love talking about is the concept of autonomy.
I'm
So
excited to have this conversation with you, and thank you for taking your time out and for being excited about it. I just want to pick up. Let's start with what you just said.
yeah.
Why do we believe that you and I both have it so close to our heart? Why is it important? Why is it something that's so important or meaningful to us?
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak for you, but for me, it was something that greatly lacked in my childhood.
Hmm.
I came from a dysfunctional and abusive family that didn't allow autonomy. I didn't even know what it was, probably till my 30s. So I know I look young, I'm 40. But so later in life, going through these healing journeys and raising my children and teaching in the classroom and just figuring out what didn't I get to help me be successful as an adult. And so I know it might seem silly, but I just remember the moments of beginning to understand autonomy and just this sense of self, this sense of permission. If you grew up in a codependent family like I did, you know, it's not allowed, it's not encouraged. I was actually punished for thoughts outside of my family or wanting to be away from my family, or I mean, just any sense of self empowerment. And so I think that is why it's so dear to me in realizing, wow, I actually have, control. I'm self-governed. I can decide what I do in my life. I can decide what I think in my life. And then to give that gift, I have three children. They're 21, 19, and 13. So to give them the gift of autonomy and then my students, I just feel like it is that. It's such a gift.
Yeah.
It's respectful, it's honoring, and it's empowering, it's equipping. When you say to someone, you are in charge of your life. Now, you can't control everything that happens to you, but it's such an empowering moment to think, wow, I have responsibility for the life that I want to create. That opens possibilities in
That
the
is so
world.
beautiful.
So it did that for me. So I think that's why it's so near to my heart is I didn't have it.
That's
And then
beautiful.
I had to get it for
Interesting.
myself. So
Sorry to interrupt,
no,
but lots to unpack there. But interestingly
yeah,
enough, we're both coming from a similar background.
okay.
Having not had autonomy, mine was very much in a religious guise and also in my family where we were told what to do, what to believe, who
Yeah,
we were going to be, what was intended for us even. So
yeah,
having to, or being allowed to, given the gift of moving into being autonomous and understanding autonomy and that kind of beauty of knowing that I have control, like you said, over my future and
Yeah.
enabling that in my kids additionally was also so empowering for me. But one thing also that was a real catalyst in my life on autonomy was I watched a talk by a gentleman called Daniel Pink, and he focuses on excellence in the workplace, helping leaders to increase motivation and engagement to those people that they manage.
Yeah.
And he does a whole talk on the surprising truth about what motivates us. And his underlying sort of takeaway was autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And it
Mm,
goes back to the sort of archaic way of leadership or management in companies or old ancient factories or even on the farms or whatever. And dare I say, back in through slavery and someone in charge.
mhm.
And as we go through the history of leaders and managers, we seem to still have an archaic mindset or a little bit bureaucratic that we are hold a position and therefore it's our job to tell people what to do, how to succeed, how to achieve, etc.
Right.
But what Daniel Pink says is actually if you pull back from that, you take off the reins and you just lead with a vision, you just lead with the opportunity to know where we're going, but everybody can get there how they
Yeah.
feel is best or give to those opportunities, come up with their own ideas, bring their own excellence, then your company flies. Now,
Yeah.
we're talking about teenagers and we're talking about kids and education. So let's reel that back and put that exact same theory or our passion around autonomy into the classroom or into
Yeah.
parents and children, because I don't think my example is too dissimilar from what we're seeing in teachers and even parents, right? Because we feel we
Yeah.
have this title or we feel we have this position and we are supposed to impart and instruct and navigate our kids or our students. But in
Yeah.
fact, we might be shooting ourselves in the foot. Tell me more about what you think.
Well, and kind of what you're speaking about is really expectation. As adults, if we are a new parent or we're a teen parent or we're a teacher, there's these underlying, like unspoken expectations that we have for ourselves, right?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm supposed to be doing blah, 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 whatever. And actually, autonomy, fostering autonomy in people around you is really, like you're saying, in stepping back. You actually do less
yes,
because you want them to do more.
that's right.
And it is a little bit uncomfortable sometimes because people, when they're used to encountering other teachers, let's say, so I teach seventh and eighth grade, so I'm middle school. So by the time they get to me, and not every teacher thinks the way I do, right? And
Sure.
they're so used to teachers telling them what to do, how to think, blah, 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 whatever. And then they get to me, and there's this space that I'm not filling, they're filling. And I ask them questions. Well, how would you do it? Well, what do you think about it? How would you express this to the world? What are you learning right now? And there's always this moment where they just feel, what's the word I'm looking for? Like they're, they don't know how to do
Yeah,
it,
totally
right?
taken
They
aback,
don't, they
almost
just,
shocked,
they
like, I
look
don't
at
know
me
how to
like,
think about
I
that.
don't, I don't know. Like nobody's asked me this. And there's this awkward space where I have to stay pulled back because the
Yes.
tendency is I want to step in and say like, oh, I'll fix it for you and do it this way and blah, blah, blah. And I have to intentionally say, Courtney, stay back,
Yeah.
because you have to let them like struggle. You
Yes.
have to let them wiggle and be like, I don't know, and complain and whatever, because it's in those moments where you're sending the subtle messages. If I stay back and I say, you're going to figure this out, I believe in you, you're creative, you're inventive, you can come up with solutions, and I don't run to fix it for them, guess what happens? Is they eventually come back to me and say, I was thinking about XYZ, and this is what I came up with.
Amazing. And not only do they
Yeah,
feel smarter and
exactly.
so proud of what their brain could achieve, but they also feel respected. And I think there's this beautiful space that comes, that opens up when someone feels respected, especially by a quote unquote higher power or a teacher or a parent, that actually they really do want to allow me to come up with the idea. They want to know my opinion. And then all of a sudden you feel so self-confident. And even if what you came up with isn't the best, or it turns out to actually be completely incorrect,
Sure.
what you've gained by being respected and by being invited to have your own ideas and therefore more confident to be listened to and to share your opinions is lifelong, right?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
absolutely lifelong. I started out as an early years teacher, and especially in England, I know it's the same in the States. We encourage kids to independently come up with ideas, to create and to design a lot more than we do in grade school. And it's
Mhm.
always been a bit of an irony to me. Like we're working so hard to teach them between 2 and 6 of how to be inventive and creative and lead in the groups and communicate. And then they get to grade 1 and we're like, sit down, be quiet, here's a worksheet, do
Yeah.
exactly as I say. And then all the way through, it's like that. And then they get to university and they're supposed to be researchers and creative and design and write a paper and come up with their own ideas. And the whole space between grade school to the end of high school is shut up and be quiet, listen to my lecture. Here's the
Yeah.
workbook, the answers at the back. Don't look, don't
Yeah. Yeah.
collaborate, don't think independently. And I think we're doing such a disservice to our
Yeah.
children.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Well, and then
So,
the flip side with parents, um, I think we have to watch again, not only our expectations, but there's so many emotions that come with allowing someone to govern their own decision making, their own world, their own life. Because
mhm,
I have both of those sides, right? Teacher in the classroom and then parent of teens. And they're similar, but they are a little bit different because they're my children, and then
such
I
a big
have
difference.
you have everything that you bring with you. You have all of your baggage, you have your childhood, you have what you want them to do. So now we're getting into like, I have to release control. I have to manage my own expectations. I have to, and I get to, like you were saying a minute ago, is when we invite someone into this creative space, you actually begin to see the real person that they are,
Mhm.
right? And that's not always something like people don't always have that mindset of like, wow, if I approach you in curiosity, instead of thinking I have you figured out already, right? Then it's like it's a whole new relationship with my teens
Yeah.
in allowing them to reveal who they are to me versus me telling them who they are.
Yes.
Yeah.
So important. And I think I want to circle back as well to that point you made around that waiting period that has to happen when you do give them that space of thinking and creativity
Yeah.
and autonomy,
Sure.
because it is so easy to switch into these roles that you were talking about,
Yeah.
and whether it's a parent or a teacher, really focusing now on parents or even a young person who's come out of school and they're just coming into your company and you're the new you're their boss or whatever.
Yeah.
It's I talked a lot to teachers about this over my years of training teachers, is that
Yeah.
changing the dynamic of that role and standing back and being quiet and being the facilitator of thought and just probing further with an open-ended question and keeping stump and biting your tongue or sitting on your hands
Yeah.
not to either place that role on them or that identity on them or the answer.
Yeah.
What are some of the top tips that you might say to a parent or to a
Yeah.
teacher to do
Yeah.
that?
I would say that at first it's going to feel uncomfortable. I think that's why we don't stay back and we want to jump in and fix it. And we want, so you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable,
Okay,
right?
good
You
one.
have to be comfortable in that space of like, oh, I have to, like you said, I have to bite my tongue. I have to sit on my hands. I have to not do something that feels awkward.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit of like training that self discipline of actually come back. It's okay. I'm going to stay in this uncomfortable moment and not rush to fix their world for them. Because if we do that, that's a disservice to this
Yeah.
team. If I
Yeah.
always step in and I say, here's the solution, here's whatever, I'm actually harming their ability to think of solutions for themselves. So you're going to have a lot more time on your hands because you're
You're not
right.
fighting fires anymore.
You're not, if I have 30 kids in the class, I'm not like fixing their worlds for them. I'm sitting back, I'm answering questions, I'm being a cheerleader. I'm saying, way to go. I can't believe that you thought of that. That's so amazing. Right. So you do have to change your expectations on the role
Yeah.
of what you're doing. You are mentor, guide, encourager, cheerleader.
Yeah.
If
Beautiful.
they're missing something, you can nudge a little bit, like, oh, hey, have you thought about that? And then send them on their way.
Yes.
Um, but mostly, yeah, you just have to get really comfortable with, this is awkward. This is a new way to do it. And I'm not doing as much as I thought I would. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And being comfortable with that.
And being comfortable
And
with it.
not feeling like you're not doing your job properly, because actually once you get in the swing of it and you see the outcome, you can realize you're doing your job better,
Yeah.
because
Exactly.
the learning that takes place and the growth of
Yeah.
the person is really exponential compared to the more traditional way.
Yeah.
Another way I've sort of enacted that in my own life, both as a parent and an educator, is to use open-ended questions, but
Mm-hmm.
truly open-ended ones. And there's a really simple rule that if you know the answer to that question, then it's not an open-ended question. So
Okay.
it's that's one thing I've kind of said to teachers,
Yeah.
frame your questions so sort of strategically so that there really is multiple answers or multiple possibilities. And
Okay.
then you really open the path for that kid to have all of his ideas really welcomed. But it's a
Yeah.
tough one. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's good though.
yeah.
Yeah.
So for an example, I don't know, let me think of an example. There's ways to, I have a whole list of them, like ways to
Yeah.
reshape it, but let's see if I come to mind. That the kid says, well, how am I going to fix this bridge because it just keeps falling down, for example. And the kid's young, I mean, not seventh or eighth grade, but let's say they
Yeah.
have a project and they're using a variety of materials. And of course, you know the answer. But if you said, well, do you think that if you used those materials, it might work? If they are the materials that will work, you know the answer.
Right.
So rather, it would be really vital to reshape it by saying, well, what have you seen that might hold it up? What experience do you have? Or what could you research? What could you find? Or what do you think materials would be weak or melt? And then all of a sudden, the possibilities are open for them to come up with their own thoughts or ideas. But it takes a lot of practice. And I think
Yeah.
it takes a lot of, like you said, patience and standing back and not doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Well, and being open-minded, I don't know if all adults struggle with this, but often we think there's just one way to do something. There's one
Right.
way to hold that bridge up. There's
That's
one way
right.
to design something. And when we see someone doing it wrong, we think, oh, don't do it that way, you
That's
know.
right.
And that's kind of like, society is like that. We in our own minds can be kind of closed-minded, and like you said in the very beginning of, like, we're pushing the boundaries of that. It takes each one of us internally opening our minds to, there's a lot of possibilities. There's so many ways
That's
to,
right.
oops, I just hit the computer, to approach this, problem. And if we do, if we just open our minds a little bit, it doesn't have to be just one way,
That's
and
right.
so concrete,
That's It's
Yeah.
that going back to that divergent thinking, which is really not embedded in our education system at
No.
all. And I
Yeah.
think also this relates really importantly, not only with sort of cognitive or academic concepts, but with behavior concepts or emotional concepts or, all the things that we go through. And
Yeah.
I know that in schools I've worked in before, we've really led the whole behavior and emotional thing with the rights respecting
Yeah.
ethos, and giving it back to them rather than say sorry, you made him feel bad, or don't act like that because you've hurt these people, rather
Yeah.
putting it back on them. How are you feeling about your actions? What do you think will happen? And allowing consequences to take place, such as,
Yeah.
well, if I don't want to say sorry right now, I might not have him as a friend anymore, and that's a consequence I'm prepared to deal with, or whatever.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
then letting the
Exactly.
kids have that journey and that autonomy in that too, rather
Yeah.
than, it takes away a lot of punishment and it takes away a lot
Yeah.
of dealing with behavior.
And they learn so much in that. Like, yeah, I definitely want to stay on the like developmental side of autonomy and parents, because I used to always say, like, so with teens, if we're talking specifically about teens and autonomy, if I think of a child's development, and you and I know this really well, there are stages that they're supposed to go through, right? Infancy, toddlers, young adults, teenagers, all these things. And most parents in society are really comfortable with the toddler stages of what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to walk, they're supposed to learn to say no. There's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
These are norms for that behavior. But I think what we miss is, and there's really not a lot of conversation around teenagers. Teenagers are just put on the back burner and like, oh, you know, they have an attitude or whatever. And I'm like, actually, when I learned about autonomy, autonomy is supposed to happen in the teen years.
Yeah.
It's developmentally appropriate. That blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh. So my parents could have been fostering my sense of self, my voice, my decisions, my friends, my clothes, my education, my sports. I mean, it's all of the things that make you up. And so sometimes you have to equip parents, because there's this pulling away that happens in your teenage years, because parents are we love that young children age where you're everything to your child. Your
Yeah.
child just looks at you and they're like, I love you, I want to be with you, and
I want
whatever.
to
And
be like
I
you.
want to be like you, you're amazing. And then there's this separation that begins to happen, and they're like 12, 13, and the kid's doing this and the parents like, wait, where are you going?
That's right.
And, right. And I've seen parents do this successfully, and I've seen parents do this not successfully. And the go-to reaction is to cling and to pull them back and to say, no, you can't separate from me. And I want to say, no, as parents, we are supposed to allow them
Yeah.
to separate from us and to create that autonomy. And our job is to stand still, create a safe space that says, no matter how far you go from me, I will always be right here.
That's
And
right.
it anchors them back. We're talking more about secure attachment. It anchors them back to, my parent is right there. They're not going anywhere. And we give them so much space to explore.
That's
Who
right.
am I? What do I think? What do I want? Because the conversations go from, how do I build this bridge, to how far do I go with this boy? I mean, the conversations, like the questions get,
Huge.
deeper. Yeah,
Absolutely.
life
Mhm.
altering questions. And so I want to encourage parents too, that when they don't have to let your teen be disrespectful to you, but when they push back on you, when they give you attitude, when they say, I don't want to do it this way, I don't want to go to that family event, I don't like that uncle, and when they're sharing this stuff with you, that's the invitation for autonomy. That's the invitation where we get to say, oh, you're revealing something about yourself to me, and I can either take it and understand you, or I can shut it down. I have the option, right? And so you really get to say, like, I want you to make these decisions, and I'm going to be there with you through this stage. Like, I helped you potty train and I helped you walk, and now I'm going to help you figure out the world for yourself.
Yeah. So important. It's such an important message. Thank you so much for going through that. I think it's going to be so empowering for listeners. And just remember as well, neuroscience teaches us that there is a repruning stage between the ages of 12 and 15. So a lot that was learned around attachment, around identity, around safety, around social norms, those need to die away because they're different now. They're different in the adult sphere. So they need to test their boundaries. Just like the terrible twos, we then have the terrible teens because it is neurologically changing in the pathways within the brain. And those things of old are dying away. And that if I leave mommy's side, I might be in serious danger. That neuron has to die away in order for a new one to be formed that no matter how far I go, mommy's still going to be right there when I need her and come back. So
Exactly.
it's the process of us allowing that reconnection, attachment or knowledge to embed, right? That new synapse to be made. But when
Yeah.
we punish or we pull back or we try and keep it as it was, it's almost impossible then for that really to truly happen in the way it needs to.
Yeah.
And even if it gets bad enough where there's a F you, mom, or a you're such a shithead or whatever, we have to not take that personally, as long
Yeah.
as obviously we haven't been shitheads. But if we have, then we also have to say, you know what, you're not wrong. I was out of order as well. And this is where they're also understanding the sort of dynamics between parenting and autonomy and mom's place now in my life and my place as a growing adult. And
Yeah.
and it's really important for parents to have these conversations and teachers and anyone working with teenagers
Mhm.
because they are going to push back. And for example, in England, it's a small example, but they have to wear uniforms in
Mhm.
schools. And what do teenagers do? They leave their shirts hanging out. The girls hike their skirts up as high as they can manage without their underwear showing. They, wear big earrings or hairbands just to do a big FU to the rules purely because they're desperate to have autonomy.
Yes.
And, it's not because they're bad people. It's not because they're, the feral youth of the
Yeah.
town.
Yeah. They're doing what they're supposed to do,
They're
which
doing what they're supposed to do.
that's to me, it's like, man, we could really help them instead of telling them you're not supposed to do that. And it's like developmentally, yes, they are. They're supposed to do that.
That's
So
right.
we could say, oh, I love your earrings. That's a beautiful, you know what I mean? I love your
Yeah,
headband. It's so
that's
pretty.
right. What a beautiful expression of your character or your
Exactly.
art or your interest. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a gift.
Yes. And there's so much time spent punishing in school. The
Yeah.
amount of personnel and time spent on detentions and on telling off and putting them out of the classroom for being themselves and being, I don't know, strong and brave to show some personality or character. How do you think we should sort of switch that? Maybe let's do a message for both parents and teachers in regard to how we need to support our young people in that, rather
Yeah.
than punishing. What could we be doing instead?
That's hard. I mean, I'm sure there's probably better brains out there to answer that question. But I'm sure there's so many things that we can do. I think we need people like you and I that have a heart for both sides. Like, do you actually have a heart for this teen and their family? That's huge. I mean, to me, I
Huge.
always think it's just human connection, but not everyone can do it. You know what I mean? You do talk to some educators that you're like, wow, I don't know if you should be here, but that's neither here nor there. But I think if we stay curious and if we look at teens' behavior as an expression for something that they need, I find that that's always a better approach than like, what are you doing? And you have an attitude and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, okay, what's going on with you that
Yes.
you are expressing it this way? And maybe it's not a helpful way to express it, but they don't know how else to get your attention.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think
I
there's
think
some
what you
people
said
that
is so
can do it
spot
really
on.
well. Yeah.
What
Some
you
people
said
can
is
do
so
it really
spot
well.
on. And I think, of course, because in schools there's going to be this various policy, etc. And it's
Yeah,
difficult to like go straight into change how we deal with behavior. But
exactly.
remember that behavior is a communication. They are
Yeah.
trying to communicate something that they're not finding the words for,
Yeah.
but they need to communicate. And then step back and see them. Like you said, be curious, find out, rather than trying to push them into the conformity of your expectations, which is kind of the full circle of where we started, right?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
role and expectation. versus their need to be developing and have autonomy to do that.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. So, in summing up, what are some other really key messages that maybe you feel you might want to share? Is there anything else that
Yeah,
is,
I think if we kind of sum up the main things for either parents or educators is knowing that teens are supposed to be doing this. This is appropriate behavior.
yeah,
Um, and that you're going to have to get comfortable sitting in that uncomfortable space of not overbearing, not giving advice, not getting your fingers in the mix of whatever they're doing. But that you get to pull back and allow space, which is
yeah,
one of the most beautiful things that you can give somebody. And like you said earlier, it's respectful, it's honoring, it's equipping, it's empowering. It communicates so many things that we can't communicate verbally when we just step back and say, you've got this, and I'm here if you need me to guide you. So
beautiful.
it's a nuanced way of doing it. And then managing your expectations and what you think you should be doing and realizing that you're doing the right thing. If you can love them and guide them and create this safe space for them, then that's going to serve them better when they're 40 and they're adults, because they're going to have that feeling of empowerment. I can actually face this life challenge because someone believed in me, right? That's the message. We don't really, because they can relearn the math or the history or whatever we're trying to teach
Right.
them. If they don't learn it when they're 12, I'm like, okay, they'll learn it when they're 16. Like, it's not a big deal. But if we can equip them and empower them to face life, because we old people, we know how hard life is. So
Yeah,
if we can equip them early on to be like, you got this, trust yourself, you're going to know what to do, I believe in you, that actually spans their lifetime. And
beautiful.
that's
That
the thing
is
that we
just
can
so
give them.
powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful and so true. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
One other
Welcome.
thing that popped in my mind as you were speaking as well is we we often get triggered by certain behaviors, right? Something is said or done, and for whatever reason, it's mirroring something back to us
Yeah.
that's triggering us. And whether you're the parent and you see yourself in them, or whether you want them to be a certain way and they're being opposite, so therefore you just are trying to change that. Whatever it is that's triggering you, notice that that's a you problem, right?
Yes.
That's a me as a parent or me as a teacher problem. That's not a them problem. And
Right.
often, if it's happened before, they're mirroring that back because we're so connected when we're in spaces together, right? So I think it's
Yes.
also being super aware of that energy that we're projecting or receiving from them,
Yeah.
and bite your tongue, count to 10, choose how you're going to respond. And if you get it in a habit to just say, how are you going to sort this out? What do you think you need to be? Like your daughter's walking out with a cigarette hanging out her mouth and the shortest skirt in the world going, I'm walking out to see my friends.
Yeah.
Okay, how do you think you'll be perceived by what do you think the consequences will be? And I used to joke with my husband, like, we have to pick our battles here, depending on what age they're at.
Yep.
But it's not allowing yourself to just jump straight in and try to control, and
Exactly.
and giving them the space to actually receive the consequences of a decision as long as they're in a safe enough space to make those mistakes. And by God, we need to do that more in school. There needs to be more place for mistakes to be made, or for behaviors to be shown, as long as they're not horrible, that maybe aren't our wanted ones, and allow them to deal with those consequences,
Yeah.
because it's the
I
only
agree.
way they're going to learn. And
Yeah.
like we give time and space, like you said, for them to learn the maths, and maybe we'll go over and review the lesson, or we'll go over the time with them. But I don't
Yeah.
think we do that enough for behaviors and self-awareness, and teaching them how to deal with these behaviors or these feelings or these emotions.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
must, because they don't know, like you said, they don't know how to deal with it. So we have to teach them. Wow, what a lot of takeaways. I hope all of you have been empowered by today's discussion. I know that I feel energized, and every time I speak about it, it energizes me, but more so today because you are so spot on in everything you've said. And I know that it will make a difference if you, as a parent or a teacher, enact some of these strategies or mindsets. So thank you, Courtney, for the wisdom
Yeah,
you've brought to this
thank you.
space. Thank you so much. And just to say, all of Courtney's information is going to be in the write-up below the link to this video. So if you want to know more about Courtney's speaking events or her website and how she supports parents to understand autonomy and enable teenagers to have that space to grow, please click on the links below. And also, you can find all of my links for my Classroom of a CEO, where I teach a variety of entrepreneur skills, etc. You can find those in the link below as well. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. And in case no one has told you today, you are fabulous. Thank you for coming. We'll see you in the next show.